All right. Hello, I am Norman Wren. Bear with me today, guys. Coming down with some cold, so Morgan and Yuri are gonna help me out through some of this tonight, probably. This is our second town hall that we've hosted for the Seventh Congress. Um, this month we haven't done very much. We have put through a bunch of bills that we can talk about. So, HR 246, which was a San Andreas copyright protection. This is something we worked alongside with Carmen McKenzie, or Carmen Brown, I mean now, I'm sorry. Which people can register their copyrights and whatnot through the college. HR 247 was an amendment to the criminal code regarding jail/prison break. It's just really changing the time and fine on that. HR 248 was hostage taking and kidnapping, June 2023. This was, again, changing the time and fine. And then HR 249 and HR 250 are currently under electronic vote and should have results posted on them tomorrow. Not much going on with us right now in the legislative branch. We're working on some things, meeting with some people, trying to make sure the talk between government departments is easy. I guess now we can go around the table and see if any of the other government branches want to talk about anything.
There was a lack of communication with between PDO and PD Command, which I have now just established. There were issues with some just internal conflicts with just minor things here and there, and it just all stacked up, so to the point where it just became boiling over. And that's why we've had a massive drop in PDOs that are available. But hopefully we're going to repair this gap and make sure things turn out for the better.
Anything from Safa?
Hello, I'm Safa. I have nothing to announce, but I am here to answer any questions.
Oh, yeah. What about DHS?
Oh, hello. I guess just a little updates. We currently have approximately 25 to 30 clients totals, and 13 of those are in our 2 shelters across the cities. What else? Oh, we got an upcoming event on the 23rd. Down by... It's a men's mental health thing. It's down by the which one is it? World's End Taverns. But further information coming out, because that's still kind of in the planning stages.
Oh, yeah. Anything from PD?
No, not at this point.
Interesting.
How so?
Well, there's probably a lot you could talk about.
Not particularly. If you have something in mind, you can bring it up.
Well, first, what's your name and badge number, by the way?
Deputy Chief Julie Lee, LSPD 102.
Gotcha, understood. I mean, there's been a lot of police reform being proposed by people who are concerned. It's gotten to the levels of government as well. I'm not entirely sure why there hasn't been anything addressed to the people yet. Maybe now would be a good time as to what maybe PD's view on police reform is.
You're going to be a little bit more specific with that. PD reform.
Yeah, sure. I mean, last time I was here, I proposed there be a redefinition of what was it called? Damien, do you happen to remember? I remember talking to you about it.
Let me check my notes real quick.
Not qualified immunity, not that.
It has something to do with something about the prosecutors or something like that, where someone can step in.
Prosecutorial discretion. Yes, thank you. Yes, it was called prosecutorial discretion, where the police can decide amongst themselves to take the position of DOJ. When I think you would agree, police officers have not signed up to an LEO position to be lawyers. I think a redefinition of prosecutorial discretion would benefit the people, would benefit DOJ, and would allow for the police to not take such a hard stance and, for lack of a better term, to kind of to dumb it down a little, be judge, jury, and executioner in the cases that they handle. Has that been brought to you guys at all?
It has been talked about. Well, we haven't decided on something firm at the moment. We will look into it even further. Me specifically, I was not informed about this. I was not at the last town hall.
Maybe could you expound on what was discussed? Possibly.
I cannot disclose that, unfortunately, sorry.
Okay. How about the recent fumbling of probable cause?
Who am I speaking to begin with, sorry?
My name is Jason Tanners.
Gotcha, alright.
Just a citizen. What about the recent fumbling of probable cause? As far as officers having a sort of a lack of ability to distinguish between probable cause and reasonable suspicion, and where it exists and where it doesn't. Is there like some sort of maybe updated training regimen that maybe PD's implementing?
We recently have a new batch of cadets. We've reformed the way we are training them. We are training them from ground up and reestablishing what RS and PC will be. So, and it spans across the board. So we're gonna avoid these problems in the future.
Okay, great. I think those were the only two things that I had that needed to be addressed, but thank you.
All right. Anything else from any of the government branches before we open the floor to questions?
Probably should have done that first before.
I'm gonna speak for Aaron for Public Works.
Okay, go ahead.
So Public Works received 33 apps in the last app round that we had, and Public Works Management is currently going through them at this time. They're also working on expanding training documents and training for new members of the Public Works team so that new hires can get more comprehensive training. That's
Hell
it.
yeah. All right. Anything from Morgan or Yuri regarding legislators?
I still have a few things that I'm working on, but I am again waiting for relevant information to come across my desk regarding some of the bills that I am writing. But I am working on 2 things at the moment.
And anything from Yuri?
I'm just going through currently active bills and seeing which of them are redundant and are able to be repealed, such as any bills containing wording for armored vehicles or state reps, since none of us use those anymore.
Yeah, the funding got pulled.
You know,
I missed that thing, man.
All right, we are now going to open the floor for questions from everybody.
Question, Chelsea Lafayette, the Daily Globe. Governor Avery, you spoke about a working to repair the relationship between PD and PDO. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, what you feel the nature of the issue was, and what concretely is being done to address it. And as we have a representative from PD, I would like to hear your opinion on this as well.
Mostly lack of communication with department heads. I had a meeting yesterday with Commissioner Barry Hill and some of the people from PDO, like Igor, and we kind of came down to a conclusion that neither, like, PDO was very had a very strong resentment towards law enforcement officers at the time because they didn't really know the communication standards of what was going on. Like, PD was unaware of anything that PDO had in their interest. Like, it'd be brought up, but no one actually did anything about it. No one went to IA. There wasn't a single IA thing filled out. So now that we have this direct line of communication open, I mean, we can get that shit done. Done and dusted.
Thank you. And would our representative from PD wish to add anything to that?
Sorry, would you answer this for me?
I'm wondering if you had any quotes, anything you'd like to say about the communication between the PD and the Public Defender's Office?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? All across the board, we've got officers on different shifts and different duties, right? When we reach out, when we need PDO on scene, in the cells, we always reach out. I'm not particularly aware of what the issues are. As far as I'm concerned, when I am on shift, we've had no issues. Is there anything specific that's happening? A lack of communication in some sort?
I was mostly asking in regards to what the governor talked about.
We can definitely have an email chain going in terms of any issues arising moving forward. I'm okay with that.
I
PD
put
would be okay with that.
I put that into PDO's decision. I'm just waiting on them to reach out to you guys. I gave them all the info they need, and we have the go-ahead.
Okay, that's
So,
fine by us.
like I said, it's all in their hands.
We'll be happy to accommodate that.
Thank you very much.
I can step in with my questions if that's all right. I actually have a series of questions about HR 246, the copyright protections. So first of all, I guess my main concern would be how many creative or art-focused members of the public did the legislature talk to before voting on this bill?
Being CFO of Kokoro, I do know that the entire industry actually put it up for a vote whether they'd support this idea or go against it. So, and most of it was pretty positive. There were a few that had a couple okay arguments, but the majority voted yes.
Sure. Following up on that, my question is, typically copyright is confirmed or denied on a patent office where lawyers will look it over. This is something where, you know, they're able to check and make sure that a copyrighted material corresponds with what is copyrightable. For instance, a color can be copyrighted in very specific instances, but not all. In this instance, why did the legislature have the Board of Education be the people to approve or decline copyrights?
That's a loud silence.
I came in late to the legislature while the bill was already up for a few days. so I don't have the time able to communicate with people throughout the state in regards to the implementation. But I trust the work that the other legislators did in their due diligence to greater understand how it could be implemented.
Follow-up question. Usually copyright is determined when a piece is made. So for instance, let's say I write a book and it's on my hard drive with like, a date of November 2010 or whatever. Does this act void existing creative protections on pre-made works? Like, do I have to go and get Clout and Space Chase copyrighted? Are they effectively not copyrighted now?
That'd be a question that would be best answered by Speaker Wren, as he is one who helped pen and bring the bill forward when it was done so.
Is he here?
I think that he has a few.
I've just got an email. He's here, but he's very, very sick, so he might be just like spacing out, probably just trying to not fall over unconscious.
I understand.
Maybe trying not to vomit.
If I may, I actually spoke to Miss Brown, interviewed her as regard to this bill. Her intent is for works created before the bill to still be copyrighted, for nothing to change. But obviously I cannot comment on the content of the bill, just the answer she gave me when I asked her that very same question.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I have a dumb question because I don't understand copyright laws. But Carmen is like helping with the bills?
Carmen helped pen this bill, yes.
Follow-up question. Were there no concerns about a potential, I guess, conflict of interest?
She owns the bookstore that wants to have exclusive rights to book distributions. That's a little concerning as a book writers.
Wait, exclusive rights?
Well, I didn't really understand it, but she wanted me to sign a contract to sell my book with hers, and that means I couldn't distribute it to anybody else. It had to all go through her business.
Essentially, what I have heard, to clarify, is if you print through Mackenzie Enterprises, you will be asked to limit your book publishing to brownback books. This is what I have heard.
That is correct.
Verified it myself. So that is not exactly having a monopoly, because I do believe Kraut and Sons have printing capabilities. And there's another printer, I can't remember the name, but there's a bookstore. So I guess my question is, I mean, the Board of Education is a Carmen Brown run venture, correct? And so is the bookstore. So I guess the idea that she would be involved in legislation with this, was that at all interrogated by the legislature or the executive branch?
As far as I am aware, that was not. I'm a little concerned, actually, yeah.
You guys did bring up a point that there are multiple places to have media printed and able to distribute, so you're not required to go solely through Brownback Books or Mackenzie Enterprises. Therefore, she will not hold a monopoly on the process of printing or distributing.
I mean, what about like the pressures when you go to copyright the books? You know?
No, that's a fair point.
I don't know. This was I distribute my book through a competitions business, another bookstores, and I kind of got some flack for going and printing out my books. You know, why don't you just sell with us? Well, because you want me to go exclusives, so I don't want to do that. What happens when, like, I go to the library to copyright my books and get my numbers, our identifiers or whatever's, and she's like, "Oh, by the way, I don't understand why you aren't signing with me." So, you know.
It just does insert one person into every step of the process of publication and creation, I think is the concern.
It is the entire Board of Education that oversees the copywriting, not just Carmen herself.
How many members does the Board of Education have?
Off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure. I know there are a few different leads in certain departments, but it's not solely up to the discretion of one person to dictate who does and doesn't get a copyright notification.
Oh, certainly. I'm sure there's different avenues. I'm just raising this as, you know, I'm sure you're aware I run Clout. I do Space Chase, original fiction, and various other creative works. So I'm sure you can understand as a member of the public the concern I'm raising here, and that Miss Beers is echoing.
Collector.
Apologies, collector.
I definitely see it from your point of view. I can reach out to now Miss Brown about the process once it comes to deciding who does and doesn't be allowed to copyright. I didn't have the most time to dig into the meat of the bill, seeing as I came aboard only a day or two before the bill was voted on.
I appreciate that. Could you also add to your list of questions why this is a criminal charge with associated jail time?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Wait, what?
Copyright infringement has 20 months in prison associated with each individual charge.
You get less time for the money machines.
It is a very heavy-handed copyright infringement punishment. Usually it's just a civil matter with fines, not a criminal matter with prison time.
I didn't even notice. Oh my god, that is very true.
Neither did I.
I mean, that would stack, right? Let's say hypothetically a collector runs a knockoff bookstore and she decides to unscrupulously sell my entire catalog. So would that be an instance of copyright infringement on every item she sells, which would equal, I think, like 200 months in jail?
Again, I didn't have a lot of time to dig in to really understand the full details of the bill as it was coming up for voting.
Of course, but Mr. Avery, you did sign off on this and said you found nothing objectionable in it. I'm just curious what your thoughts on these questions and this topic.
Honestly, it kind of makes me regret putting the bill forward, knowing all these these completely went right by me. So that's kind of I'm gonna put some blame on me for letting those kind of slide through. It makes me want to pull the bill, but
Well, I'm sure there's room for revisions and so on. I mean, this is
Definitely.
the point of town halls, yeah?
Yeah, 100%.
Well, that wraps my questions. I'll stop dominating the session and I'll let others take the floor.
Ago, I have a rather sensitive topic. If I may, I'd like to offer a photograph, an album to the governor here.
Why?
That I'd like him to pass around to his colleagues.
Okay.
What's your liquor number, buddy? Now, that album that he has in his possession shows photos of a police officer drawing his weapon on peaceful protesters during a demonstration on Susitancia Road. And during that situation, this specific officer was pleaded with to de-escalate the situation, and that refusal resulted in a riot that involved shots fired. And I have no idea who did these shots fired, but the point is, this riot didn't need to happen. And my question for the state legislature is, what the hell are we gonna do to stop these incidents of violence with the police that seems so commonplace nowadays?
Yeah, take a look.
Thank
at that,
you.
Damien.
Well, I do not believe that is something we can handle.
You can pass the laws, you can pass the bills.
What
But
kind
what-
of laws can we
yeah.
pass about this?
Police accountability. I'm not an expert on this. That's why I'm bringing it to y'all's attention.
I'm not an
It's
expert on
Did
either.
you pass?
you filed
did
an IA
talk-
report?
Yeah. Did you file an IA report?
I have no idea how to do that. Like I said, I'm passing this over to the town hall to discuss.
Okay. Well, we do have Deputy Chief Julie Lee here.
We
Are we
get a
just
lot-
passing it?
like-
Are we
Can you
passing this
pass
to
that-
everybody, or are
can
we
you
just going
pass
straight
that
to the
Julie
person?
Lee,
Yeah, I'm
actually?
passing
Please
straight to
pass
Julie.
that to
Pass it down. Pass it down. I want everybody to see it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna-
it clearly shows a firearm.
I'm gonna just
in his
pass it straight to
hand,
you, and then you can
another photo, a
decide on how
taser,
you wanna
and someone
go
getting
with
tased in the photo, I
Okay.
believe.
There you go.
Give me a moment to look through these. I mean, I can understand, okay, the pictures, what's happening, but what's the context behind it?
As I said, there was a bit of a peaceful protest on Susitancia Road.
Alright, I'm gonna pass this over to MCD Assistant Director Sarai Young, who's next to me. This protest happened at MCD. Right, give me a second.
This happened off the government facility. Outside of it, off of Susitancia Road. I don't know what the building's called, but it is some kind of government facility.
Yes, MCD headquarters.
This town hall just got
I
awesome.
believe there was an article in the Daily Globe related to this.
Do you want me to answer them, or Sarai, or were you going to? Can everybody else hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, I hear
Yep.
you.
Absolutely.
This town hall is getting fucking awesome.
Okay. Just give Sarai a moment to look through the photos, okay?
Absolutely.
Actually, stuff we can work on.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Why? We never get to do stuff like that. It's always just boring. It's always people complaining with no proof. We actually have proof now.
Hooray!
Yeah, so there's definitely more context to this because these photos are not like a wide view. It's very close up.
I mean, I can give you my perspective as an eyewitness because I was there for the protest. Essentially, what had happened was there was a line of protesters on the road, a bit of a demonstration, people holding their flags, no weapons in anybody's hands, nothing. This officer decides to draw their weapon, and the protesters, I shit you not, they're sitting there pleading with this guy, please put your gun away. We'll defer to you, we'll back away, please put the gun away. This guy refuses, and eventually it escalates the violence. It didn't need to escalate the violence there. It didn't need to escalate to the fucking shots fired that I started hearing whizzing past my head. But it did.
Last I heard about this, gentleman was approaching an officer with a bat.
I can guarantee you that did not happen. Nobody approached him with a bat. And if he told you that, he's lying out of his ass.
Yeah, he's not actually the one that told me about that.
No. I'm here to tell you it didn't happen.
We can only go off what we're told as well.
I mean, who's the officer in the pit?
No clue. We didn't get his name.
I mean, if you obviously got his face.
Merlin Savage.
Yeah, that would be Officer Savage.
I'm not expecting this officer specifically to be brought down. I mean, if it is, it happens. If it doesn't, doesn't. But I think to the frequency we receive these complaints, because I know everybody in this room has heard a horror story here and there. We need some kind of systemic change. And how that happens, I don't know. I'm not an expert on this shit. Like I said, that's why I'm bringing it to you guys.
Well, based off the photos and a glimpse of what I saw of it, okay? There's very few officers and a whole bunch of protesters. I'm going to pose a question to you. Or you standing and a whole bunch of people across the road from you, you cannot expect, you don't know what to expect. On a daily, law enforcement get attacked. On a daily. I clock on shift, I go out there, I get shot. There's a potential of me ending up in the hospital. Officers are allowed to hold a weapon in their hand or for self-protection, as any of you who have a weapons license will do so. Did he do something wrong? We were told that he was being attacked, or someone approached him with a bat. Now you can claim that that didn't happen. We were told
I can
that.
claim more than that. I can claim that the crowd was pleading with him to de-escalate.
A crowd of how many people?
I don't know, 10?
How many
So?
officers were seen?
Yeah, about 3.
Okay.
Irregardless,
So based off that.
the crowd
No,
was
that's
restrained.
very important, sir.
The
Yeah,
crowd was
of
restrained.
potentially 10.
The crowd
If
was
10
restrained.
people rushed at 3 people. 10 people rushing at 3 people. What would you do, sir?
So by this logic, if this
I've seen
happened,
PD do the opposite, though. I've seen 8 PD rush 3 people, so.
Right. So it's situational based, is it not?
Deputy Chief, I'm not entirely sure that this is a line of argument you want to continue down, because what you're suggesting essentially is the forfeiture of the right to assemble based on presence of police and or a lack thereof.
You can you can claim what you want, and I respect that. But I'm telling you my perspective. If I'm being told that one of the people in the crowd are rushing my officers with a bat, we are going to have our sidearm ready.
but that's the point. It didn't happen.
And that's
Okay,
your
so
claim.
from here, write a formal complaint with IA.
Correct.
That goes nowhere.
Yeah, that's why we're bringing it up here.
It actually does go somewhere because we barely get any reports from civilians.
Yeah, well, I have not received any IA about this.
To be fair, no one.
Chelsea Lafayette, the Daily Globe. Just so everyone knows, could you specify the procedure to file an IA report? Because
Yes, you can come down to the police station, okay, at RPD just across the road from you. Speak to anybody there, request any officers, okay, that will refer you to a supervisor. Myself and Captain Schultz here, two seats to my left. We are specifically head of IA LSPD. I can tell you, I have not received any IA regarding this situation. No IA has come through for this situation.
Do you realize how difficult it is to get anybody down at RPD?
Can't even get them for a gun license.
And if you try to, they tell you to go to the judge.
Or you
wait an hour and they never show up.
Considered an online form so that people could submit these complaints without having to get a officer in person.
We also don't want to be a dumping ground with a box full of complaints. We have to filter them. We don't have the time to filter everything. We understand that our sergeants are put in place to filter these towards IA.
What office admin can do. More of those, aren't you?
Sorry, could you say that again?
That you guys are hiring office administrators, are you not? Isn't that something you can test them to do?
We do have them. We do have them, but I cannot depict when they are on duty either. Sometimes we're very short-staffed. Sometimes we have overwhelming amount of people on duty.
Okay.
So just so I can have some clarification, you said you would not have time to go through all the response. And I'd like to really understand your meaning on this, because to me it sounds that if too many people file IA complaints, then complaints become irrelevant. Is that what you mean?
There are different levels of internal affairs. Okay, we have citizen complaints, we have civil complaints, we have officers that are probably, and I quote, I had a complaint the other day, and I'll give you an example. An individual, a citizen, was ran over by a police officer in a pursuit. They filed a complaint. They could not tell me the badge number, name, or department. Those are the kind of complaints that I need to filter out because I cannot. We have a staffing of over 200 police officers. How do I narrow down who was there? That's an example for you.
Okay, how would you address such an issue? Because it has happened to multiple people, and quite frankly, I think many people here will agree that these drive-bys, for lack of a better term, are an issue.
I mean, anyone can be run over by anyone else, not just PD. What would you do? You'd go to the hospital, you'd get the fire and rescue that helped you to ascertain the name of the officer who was on duty at the time, you know? Which department?
I got a question for you. Since you guys are head of IA, correct?
For LSPD, correct.
Okay, so if an IA report goes to a sergeant, right? And they deem that it's not necessary or worthy and they just throw it away. But let's say it was, or maybe it was against one of their friends and they decide not to file it. And then you turn around and find out later, it's like, and then, you know, I talk to you, you're like, I've never received an IA report. You guys should file IA reports.
The individual that submitted it should do a status check on that IA. If
the problem is it never gets submitted.
I understand.
It gets filtered
but they
through,
can
as
talk
they like
to another
to say.
individual.
So
and
we
ask if
acknowledge
this is-
there's a problem. We can work on to fix it. Let's move on to the next point.
I mean, I've had personal experience with filing a FOIA to address something that I had filed a complaint against an officer who had failed one of my audits, and the FOIA doesn't give you nearly anything at all. All I was able to get was the officer's name and badge number, which I already knew. Just wanted to put that in paper. And whether they were reprimanded or not. Because of the IA nature of the request, I was not allowed to know about it. So I don't think a status check on something IA related is going to be fruitful, because I was denied info because something was of IA nature.
May I know which officer this was?
This was a long time ago. This has long since been passed, but I'm just citing an example of maybe trying to do a status check on something relating to IA isn't going to work because a FOIA doesn't cover IA.
Would IA be comfortable in the future working with news organizations like Daily Globe and Weasel News to try to do some press releases on activities of officers that won't endanger their lives? For example, let's say an officer kicks a dog while walking down the street, and then we can, a week later, publish the fact that they were punished for kicking said dog, for example.
And what the nature of the punishment was, that was the information I was denied. Because I did get word that the officer that I had filed a complaint about was reprimanded, but I have no idea if that nature was, if the nature of the punishment was a 5-minute conversation or all the way up to a demotion. I have no idea. I wasn't able to be informed of this. So that as well, additional to what Maxine says.
The Daily Globe would be willing to publish that information if asked.
All news organizations would be more than happy to work with police to give more transparency.
So the problem I've always had with IA is it's officer ran, and it feels like it's an innate conflict of interest. It feels like it should be another governing body overseeing PD, and it shouldn't be officers themselves.
Are you suggesting that, wait, another government body?
It should. The problem is
That doesn't know the way we run the department on a daily basis, and our protocols and SOPs that we need to follow. You're going to hand that over to another government body to oversee?
the problem right now is you guys are investigating yourself and finding nothing wrong.
We never said that we didn't find anything wrong. Internal affairs is internal affairs. Do you guys air your dirty laundry out there? If you have a problem with your department, do you tell everybody what you do?
I mean, yes, that's called the marshals investigate.
Transparency.
And then they post dockets.
That wouldn't. Internal affairs is not about transparency. I can guarantee you we reprimand our officers, and they do. There are demotions, there are terminations. Now, what are you suggesting that we do? We tell you everything that we do? Is that what you guys want to see?
I don't. When there's a public incident with a public officer causing problems, perhaps a press release about that officer with that incident should be public. Not every single one needs to be public, but if they're bothering people, if Jason Tanners has an issue with the said officer, perhaps he should be informed of how the officer is punished. Doesn't need to be a public thing for everything. Situation to situation.
I agree. I would not want to be reprimanded and then just put it out there in the papers. But maybe expanding the FOIAs.
We can definitely look into communicating with that, for sure.
Yeah, I'd be sure, and I would be all for expanding on things like FOIA to include certain things like that, or expanding on possibly the Victims' Rights Act to include some of these things. That would be wonderful. There are many things that would codify transparency here. And there are definitely plenty of ways to do that. I mean, the only way it's possible, though, is if LEO and the departments involved in LEO work are accepting and receptive to these sorts of changes. Because if
Further and look
yeah,
into this further. If that
Sure.
is what we want to discuss, yes, I can bring it to the department and high command, and we can definitely work on something.
sure. Because I mean, there would be nothing more than that the rest of us citizens would like than I would love for the LEOs to just listen. We know there's a problem. We're gonna help fix it. We hear you guys. We're gonna help fix it. And I like what I'm hearing from you as well, Deputy Chief. If you're gonna bring it to them and want to discuss it, awesome. But we want to hear from you after these discussions happen, or hear from somebody else in a similar position of power within LEO after these discussions happen, to hear what you guys have decided on.
I can disclose with you that LEO Cops, which is the COPS program, Community Outreach,
Sure.
are in. Well, I suppose Allegra Scott is in charge of this. Okay, I can give you a name, Lieutenant Allegra Scott with LSPD. She is planning, or has planned, and reached out to Weasel News, and we are working on, I guess, communicating with the public what happens, and having Weasel News or Daily Globe with us, for certain situations, have them at the station, have them ride with us, so that the public will know a bit more about how we work. It is not always pleasant, but there are days that are, it is under control. Right now, I'm on the radio, I'm still clocked in, and it is out of control out there. But moving forward, I will bring this to High Command.
I'd be more than willing to sit with you and talk about
Sure.
this after this assembly.
I'd be happy to.
Oh, there was also I don't remember the incident specifically, but it's also something I've been personally involved in. Why do, and I'm so sorry to bombard you again, Deputy Chief, but why do officers think that it's unlawful for a victim of a crime to present to refuse to present ID?
It's a tricky one to answer. Everyone is advised to provide identity because the only way that we can tell who you are, everyone looks different, right? On a daily basis, someone changes their hairstyle, puts on some makeup, dresses differently. It's very hard for us to determine who that person is. And the only way that we can do so on the field is some form of identity, be it a hunting license, a driver's license, identity card.
Sure, absolutely. My specific point is more so about victims of kidnapping or victims of hostage taking, being pressured to present ID when they themselves are a victim of a crime. I myself have refused to present ID as I have only been a victim. The officer who had searched me after ensuring my safety, thanks to him, I don't want that to go unnoticed. He did make sure I was safe in leaving. After he searched me, dispelled his reasonable suspicion, and then asked for my ID. I respectfully refused, as there was no reasonable suspicion to do so. And he proceeded to threaten me with the 9s because I pleaded not guilty to failure to present ID.
So there's 2 points that I can answer to that, right?
Sure.
One, we need to put a report in, right? Victims of kidnapping, hostage taking. So we need your name. If you can
Sure.
give us a name, that would be fine. The alternative is if said officer, any officers are wanting an ID, the alternative is to bring you back to the station to fingerprint you. So we can have a name for the report.
Right, but that's not a legal obligation to a citizen, a victim,
It is not a
more
legal
specifically.
obligation, but you are obliged to present yourself, your identification. We need to identify you. We don't,
You don't
have any
need-
other option.
Yes, you do.
Well, if
You can say an unnamed individual.
or kidnapping, would you not want a report and for us to do something about it to help you?
That's subjective, isn't it?
Well, then the alternative is you saying that we didn't help because we don't know who you are. How do we help if we don't know your name?
You've ensured my safety.
And
That's helping, is it not?
So your point being,
Why do you? Why do I have to tell you what my name is if you've ensured my safety and the perpetrators are no longer on scene?
okay, let's look at it from a different angle, shall
Sure. Absolutely.
we? Let's say it becomes a civil lawsuit, okay?
Okay.
And both parties are trying to FOIA information from the PD regarding this incident. We don't have names on the report because said person failed to identify. Then it becomes a problem for whoever's trying to file a civil complaint in court. You don't have names, and then it falls back on the PD, and it falls back on the officer who didn't do their job.
Oh no, they did do their job by not violating my rights by making me ID myself when I had no reasonable suspicion. They did do their job. It just put you guys in a sticky situation. I'm not entirely sure that getting you guys out of sticky situations like a possible civil suit means that you can violate rights like that.
I mean, the case.
The Fourth Amendment
out there,
specifically.
You know, if we don't file proper anyone, right? Like for civil complaints, for court orders, whatnot, we need names on paper. Cases get thrown out if we don't have enough information.
Right, but that's not my legal obligation. That's your guys's. That's if somebody provides ID to you, sure, but it shouldn't be a failure to ID charge because of a possible. Do you see where I'm going with this?
I do see, but in the penal code, we can charge you for failing to identify, sir. It is in the penal code that I'm not in charge of.
Oh, I'm not saying to abolish the charge. Absolutely. If an officer has reasonable suspicion to ID someone, they should absolutely have the right to reasonably ID someone. But if there is no reasonable suspicion, there should not be an application of failure to ID.
The person did commit a crime, or you're not suspected of committing a crime, you shouldn't have to provide ID.
I mean, the definition of reasonable suspicion is also outlined in general definitions as well. So, I mean, it's, that's something that
the penal code here because I work.
No. I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing semantics or anything like that. I'm just asking simply why a victim of a crime will be charged with a crime just for not wanting to present ID. It's a little backwards and a little bit of a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Unlawful search and seizure. You don't have to answer if you don't want. I just think that maybe expanding the Victims' Rights Act to include this, it's something along the lines of reasonable suspicion being dispelled after a search, that the victim of a crime is not obligated to present ID. Some sort of maybe reasonable expectation of privacy. And I do understand where you're coming from as far as possible civil suits, where not enough information brought to the docket will possibly result in a thrown out case. I see where that's going. I don't think that's a strong enough argument to ignore the Fourth Amendment.
May I ask a little more context on how the situation went? On what kind of are we talking about a hostage situation for something bigger, or just a kidnapping, or how did this all go?
Sure. I can provide context for my situation. I've heard stories, but that's not my place to discuss those. My personal and most recent story was maybe 3 months ago, maybe a little bit more, where I was taken hostage against my will to the Vangelicos and Grapeseed. I unfortunately don't have the IDs of any of the it's neither here nor there, but I was one of the hostages. There were two. And the officers on scene ensured our safety. One stayed behind to carry out the searches and the clearing of the buildings, the clearing of the premises itself, as is, I imagine, is standard. And the officer who had stayed behind had, in this order, asked if I was okay. I said yes. Just a little shaken up, obviously, as anyone would, and proceeded to search me, which I let them do because there is still reasonable suspicion, because they don't know if I was involved or not, which after a search, he determined that I wasn't, because I didn't have anything on me, because they didn't place anything on me. After the search, he had asked me, unfortunately I don't have a name and badge number, which was my mistake. He had asked me for my ID. I said, "Officer, I respectfully refuse to present my ID to you. You don't have reasonable suspicion to ask." He said, "But you have to give me your ID." I said, "No, I don't." And that proceeded to go back and forth for maybe another 2 or 3 minutes. This officer then threatened me with arrest. I said, "Okay, I will not resist. I will turn around and put my hands behind my back, and you can arrest me." He proceeded to arrest me. On the way back to the cells where we were, because we were at the Vangelicos and Grapeseed, we went to the sheriff's department in Sandy Shores. And on the way back, he proceeded to curse me out, telling me that he had to deal with people like me all the time, keeping him from being on the streets, chasing the people that had left the scene, even though there were, I think, 2 or 3 other units involved. I told him he didn't have to arrest me. He could be with them if he wanted to. So when we get to Sandy Shores, the sheriff's department, we go into the cells. He takes my fingerprint. He gets he gets all of that. I didn't resist any of that. We get into the cells. He asked me if I wanted to plead for failure to ID, which was my only charge, and I said not guilty. He said, "Okay, awesome. There's no judge available, so I'm going to send you up to Bolingbrook for the 9s until one is available." Verbatim, he said that. That's not a paraphrase. I said, and I called his bluff. I said, "Do it." He left the room for 5 minutes, came back in, let me out of the cells, and let me go.
Right. So, besides now the whole him asking for ID, first of all, him like you said, cursing you out, that's absolutely, obviously not really something that we like to see from the officers. So if things like this happen, like we discussed early on today, those things need to be brought up to supervisors' attention so we can deal with them internally. On the other behalf, you said you just said yourself that there was RS given to search here, which you agreed with. Again, I'm not there. I wasn't there, so I can't really judge in a one-to-one scenario to that scene since I wasn't there. But if there was a reasonable suspicion given that you could have been involved in the crime, regardless of being the hostage or not, it doesn't prove that a hostage wasn't necessarily involved. If you haven't had anything on you, that doesn't necessarily cut you out of working with them, right? So I feel like the RS, in my personal opinion, was still given, and if there's anything coming up afterwards with ongoing investigation, then they get like the deputy chief mentioned early on, we need to have some kind of documentation on who was involved in it.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that point as well. I think where we differ, because I actually do agree that is a good point, where it's reasonable suspicion can persist through the search. I think that's where we agree to disagree, is that I believe the reasonable suspicion would be dispelled after the search, because the search then more so proves that you weren't involved as far as the valuables were concerned. Yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah, and again, it's not like, I agree it might be less likely that someone is involved, but our investigation still is going on regardless of suspects being caught or not. Sometimes we catch them, sometimes we don't. That's just how it is. And again, it's just important for investigation that we have all sides covered, because thorough investigations, are still relevant, regardless of some people might think, oh, they escaped, that's it. But for any kind of future incidents, these informations might be relevant, right? But I definitely agree. At least the point that the officer, what he might have said there. Again, I wasn't there. I can't say anything against it. But from what it sounded like, from your personal perspective, that's something that should be brought up to a supervisor. If it's something that gets over a point where they beyond being professional on shift.
Sure, absolutely, and I would be and that's, if something like that happens again, I'm absolutely taking it right to the necessary superiors. I think my only response to your point of view there is, should reasonable suspicion persist through a search, you would have to, right, because the burden's on the officers, right? It's not just reasonable suspicion, it's reasonable articulable suspicion, which means if it's just an investigation, that doesn't really, because you're investigating something doesn't necessarily mean that reasonable suspicion is established. I think persisting through a search is a difficult thing for PD to be able to articulate to somebody, especially in a court setting. I think PD would have to own that, or there would be some sort of law that would have to own that would say reasonable articulable suspicion persists through a search in the victim of a crime, which I don't see being constitutional.
I mean, sorry to jump.
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, technically, right, if you would have an ID on you, then through the search, they would have already most likely, known your identity.
Sure. I did not. I did not have my wallet on me at the time.
All right. I think this is really a case to case basis on the circumstances. But I'm personally of the opinion just because something hasn't been found on someone doesn't necessarily mean that they are not involved in a crime. We've had I myself have been involved in a couple of incidences a long time ago now, but where hostages did receive some of the goodies or from the heists or robberies.
Sure.
So I think that is something that can be articulated in court, but again, in my personal opinion, that is really a case-to-case basis.
Sure, and I think that would come up in the search, right? If you could just, before the officer searches you, if something was placed on you, you could say, they placed something on me, I don't want it, please remove it from my person, and at that point you've dispelled your reasonable suspicion.
Not necessarily. People
Right,
lie.
you guys would be conducting your investigation, but at that point
Correct.
your reasonable suspicion is no longer articulable.
As long as you're on scene, you know, of a crime.
Yeah.
So all bystanders are then subject to search?
Well, if you're a hostage or, you were kidnapped on scene at the particular situation. I'm not talking about people across the road. I mean, we have officers CCTV that we can access from the stations before we go to any Evangelicos, for example. We know who's in there. We know who's involved at that time.
Sure. Yeah,
after
absolutely.
we leave the scene, other people may be involved. You know, we can't determine that.
Oh no, for sure, and that's why you guys conduct your investigations.
Correct.
But on scene, though, reasonable suspicion is necessary, and I don't think CCTV, and I think that would be your guys' job to investigate without ignoring someone's Fourth Amendment right to protection from unlawful search and seizure. I think. I think investigations, just because an investigation exists doesn't mean reasonable suspicion is articulable. A suspicious activity call has historically not been establishing of reasonable suspicion. So, I mean, just because you guys are working on something.
If we're talking about RS and everything like that, and
Sure.
just that alone, it seems to be something that we should bring up with the legislation, no? Not just PD alone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm here bringing it up to you guys. Is that I think reasonable suspicion. I think this should be the Victims' Rights Act should be expanded to include victims of crimes, such as hostage taking, where if reasonable suspicion is dispelled on scene, that they no longer are subject to identifying.
Actually, if I may interrupt, sorry again,
Sure.
Chelsea Lafayette, Daily Globe. I would like to hear what the members of the legislative and executive have to say about this.
About which part in particular?
Mainly about reasonable suspicion, and when it is or isn't proper to insist for an officer to insist on identifying a hostage.
I mean, I've had no training as a police officer, and I don't think neither Morgan, Norman, or Damien have either. So I don't know if we'd be the best to answer any kind of questions relating to how police operate.
Okay, my main question would be, do you believe legislation needs to be either updated or clarified in that regard?
I mean, it's certainly something that can be brought up with the legislator, but in my personal opinion, it's not, I wouldn't say it's not our place. It's our place to review laws and update them as we need to better fit the climate of the people today. But again,
That is
I'm
what
not,
we're talking about, though.
I know. I'm not up to date on how the police implement their laws. I've not really been stopped by police or anything like that, so I don't know how they differentiate their reasonable suspicion or probable cause.
You don't know their SOPs.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, thank you very much, Representative Devlin.
So we were talking about in addition to the Victims' Rights Act. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I was when I was brainstorming. That's a possible avenue for something like that, I think.
Okay. A lot of DHS handles that apparently.
Yeah.
How would that be handled?
Like, I was trying to think of that while people were talking about that, because there's not really a thing in the VRA that talks about officers. The whole point of it is like to provide you with a suspect's name, and it also gives generic informations.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing, and I'm not sure how we would amend that to include the thing that you were talking about, Tanner.
I can kind of walk through a general example real quick. So let's say I get robbed or taken hostage, right? I can file a VRA Act and ask about the, if there's a case number, they usually provide the case number, or they describe like, this happened on this date at this times. The DOJ reviews that and they look at the outcome of the case. They tell me if it's still under investigation or closed, and usually what is provided is the name of the offenders, if they were sentenced, and sometimes the charges and amount of time and stuff. So it provides them with that information, and then like as far as DHS goes, if they would like to provide a statement in court, we help them compose ones. But it doesn't really include anything about like the officers involved. It's all about like who did an offense to use.
Okay, so maybe the VRA isn't the most appropriate place for something like this. Maybe a slight redefinition to include the victims of crimes redefinition, not of DHS or of the VRA or anything like that. I'm talking like maybe a redefinition of the failure to ID charge, or a definition of reasonable suspicion that includes a generalized version of something like this, where a victim of a crime does not establish reasonable suspicion, or if reasonable suspicion is dispelled to the victim of a crime, then they're no longer subject to failure to ID. Something along those lines may help instead.
All right, is there anything more we need to discuss?
I know I got something, but
What do you got?
well, I was here. My wife was supposed to do this, but I kind of got put in her stead. But essentially, as a civilian of this wonderful city, well, as I think we've all heard, there's some issues with PD. And and some of the issues that I have is we talked about IA and everything else, and there's a lot of things that kind of correlate with the story that I have. So my name's Ivan Sinclair McFall. I had a court case. It was kind of, all of the things that happened to me are fairly public record. And just the injustice that PD did to me specifically, and how the laws and how PD utilizes them to take my human rights away. So, for instance, as far as I'm aware, PD only has there's a very limited amount of charges that PD can utilize to deny people bail outright. It's fairly large charges like terrorism, murder, etc. I had an officer put me away for 11 years. You know, essentially, you know, I didn't even get a bail hearing for 11 years because she decided to deny me bail and for charges that were not allowed to deny bail. And there's no, and from what everything I know, there was an IA report filed again and everything, and she is still a sergeant. There was, from everything that I was able to find out, there was no reprimand or anything against this officer for straight up denying my human, you know. I even warned her, I even explained it to her in the cells when she told me she was denying my bail, that she's incorrect and ignored me. And ended up putting me away for 11 years for it. And it's like, there is no oversight, and it's like, and and that's some of the things that just kind of, there's just no PD accountability for the actions that they do, you know, and everything
In
that.
order for you to be put away for 11 years, a judge needs to be present.
That's the problem. There wasn't. That's the thing.
What was this?
This is Sergeant Laney Bishop. There was an IA report filed against her.
Did you file the IA complaint personally?
I think it was done internally, from what I was told. Because even there was other officers telling her that she was doing incorrect. Because that's the problem, is it took 11 years because she flat out denied my bail. She didn't read my charges out individually. And I'm like, she basically, and then there was another issue where the charges that she told me and then the charges that she ended up filing on my docket because I pled not guilty were two different things. There was gross negligence of this officer of the highest degree. And it's all, like I said, it's all in my docket. It's all public knowledge. And PD did nothing about it. Even when brought to their attention, even when brought to the commissioner, even when brought to the lieutenants. And like, it's like I said, it's just, and there was situations where like that entire situation, like I said, and the charges that I got committed were unjust. I was fleeing from police, was never given a lawful order at any given time. I proceeded to have more officers fire upon me, which when I fired back twice. I ended up going away for 4 counts of felony attempted murder for firing my gun twice. And trying to flee bullets, but officers just shooting at me, not trying to give me lawful orders. It's like I said, it's been a, like the issues, like I said, where Jason, Mr. Tanner's over there was saying how, like, you know, like, hey, I'm just gonna stick you in for the 9s. It's like, it's not a, I've heard the same thing. I've had it happen to me. I've had protests like this other gentleman with the pictures, but it be 3 civilians unarmed versus 8 officers. And an officer pushed the civilian, and then the civilian pushed back, and then the officers opened fire on the civilians because now it's an officer assault. And how you guys are allowed to brandish your firearms, but it's not brandishing. But if we were to pull out our guns in response, you would arrest us for brandishing. The law seems to only be applied one side. Officers are never held accountable.
In regards to your particular situation with Sergeant Bishop, I will personally look into the situation.
Okay. It's my whole docket, all of the evidence, it's all public knowledge. So.
Will do.
Ivan Sinclair McFall.
Okay. Oh, he passed out.
I think he's dehydrated.
He's either dehydrated or hungry. Yeah.
Oh, poor guy.
Is that someone gonna
get
call
medical.
911?
Norman.
I think he's also mentally out of it at the moment as well.
Okay.
Understand, you know. And figure out something to put in place that so my situation doesn't happen to any other civilians out there.
We'll have to look over that or your particular case.
Oh yeah.
And see what happens.
Yeah, like I said, my whole case is public knowledge. You'll see, like, it basically,
I'm gonna get a call.
Per the HRs and from the legislators that I talked to, there's limited amounts of charges, which none of my charges were allowed to be essentially, there was no justification for her denying my bail. From from legislators and the lawyers that I talked to. And then it went up for the system, and it took I was away for 11 years before a judge was able to grant my bail. All because the officer unjustly denied my bail from the get-go.
Just so everyone's in the loop, there's no fire rescue on duty. We're gonna have to transport them ourselves, okay?
Okay.
All right. Given what's going on with Norman, sorry I didn't get your name. I was talking about your issue.
Oh, Ivan Sinclair McFall.
Okay, sorry, when you said it, but I missed it.
Yep.
So, you cool with me calling you Mr. McFall?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, Mr. McFall. It seems like our deputy chief, right? Our deputy chief is going to be looking into that issue for you to figure out what's going on with that particular sergeant. I can follow up with her.
I will be back, okay? Yeah.
Okay, I can follow up with her at a later date on that kind of situation and issue. Perfect. And we can figure out what's going on that front. But given Norman being knocked out and how late it's going at this stage, I'm going to ask if the state reps have anything else or if anyone else has anything else, and kind of also give people the chance to be able to take off here in a little bit. But is there anything more that you would like to share on your side? I guess I got
the only thing I really know is I know Norman, sadly, obviously his current state. I know my wife had spoken to Norman in detail about like a lot of situations, and I know he has a lot of my point, and she was here to kind of trying to update, the rest of the legislator on kind of what is what's kind of going on. And it's just we're hoping to either get some, I know Norman had some ideas with some amendments to some legislation or enacts to hopefully so what happened to me doesn't happen again.
Okay.
So
I will also follow up with Norman then at a later date. Our governor had to take off. It seemed like there may have been something pressing that he had to either sleep on or attend to. I also have to get out of here in a couple minutes myself. So I'm going to do my best to try and continue this, but I will talk to Norman at a later date once he's feeling better. Because it seems like he's also feeling he has like a head cold.
Yeah, I think his head's very cold.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give him a chance to rest up. I'm not gonna bombard him with a lot of information, but I'll follow up with him. I'll follow up with our governor as well. the state reps, you guys are going to be in contact with Norman in the first place, so I'm sure y'all will have your discussions with him. I'm not sure if y'all have your meeting tonight, given.
We had it this earlier.
Oh, you had it already. Okay, cool. So I'm sure you guys will have more internal discussions that we can also follow up on at a later date. Again, given that this meeting is run a little bit long, I don't want to force anyone else to have to sit and potentially get dehydrated and starve. We have vending machines, but I know not everyone might be having cash on them on hand. So if there's any other thoughts or questions or concerns.
I'd just like to speak to the individual that's involved with Daily Globe. Stay back with me, and Mr. McFall, I would like to get your contact information so I can follow up with you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, let me also get that as well.
Okay.
I'll come across once we're done and get that from you.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
Yes, I did.
Yep.
Yes.
Just let you know, I have a bunch of information about a lot of the cases we discussed today. If you want, we can have a chit chat about it tomorrow.
I will not be around tomorrow, but we can talk probably Monday.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, I'll give you a call.
All right, sounds good. All right, with that, I think we'll go ahead and I don't know if we have to vote to close this meeting, but
I'm not sure.
well, I'm going to go ahead and propose the idea that we go ahead and close the meeting. I'm pretty sure there won't be any nays, but you're welcome to
Right.
to nay
I
if
will
you want to.
second that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your attention for the last hour and a half. Thank you for the good questions. Thank you for the great discussion. Now you see why it is important to have as many people as we possibly can at these meetings, because you get to have the chance to have these discussions and get your concerns raised. So, all right, on that note, I hope everyone has a good night.
You too.
Thank you, Damien.
No problem.